Remember that live-action Cowboy Bebop? Having never really watched the show, I followed Netflix's, let's say, adaptation with curiosity, and having no investment in a franchise being so openly mutilated, a little smug satisfaction that no IP that I was personally invested in had been massacred to such a degree. Then they announced a BioShock movie. Hi, let me introduce myself. I'm Dave. I'm obsessed with BioShock. It's been 5 days since my last playthrough on the hardest difficulty. I stream it, play it all the time, it's my favorite game, and I frequently quote the audio diaries out of context to my befuddled wife. So BioShock is a 2007 first-person shooter from 2K Boston, with a deep horror story, taking major influence from the philosophies of Ayn Rand, George Orwell, and other authors you pretended that you knew in high school to sound deep. The game focuses on psychological terror and body horror while offering, for that time, an amazing sense of atmosphere and groundbreaking levels of freedom in exactly how you wanted to play the game. The first game, itself a spiritual successor to an earlier franchise, System Shock, pretty much blew everyone away. On its release, I remember renting the only available copy from my neighborhood Blockbuster, and seriously contemplating if moving to another country and changing my identity would keep me from needing to return it. The second game introduced a new protagonist and a new villain, and while it had its moments, buckled under the weight of trying to expand the story and setting of what was originally celebrated for being an isolating, contained experience. Though the Minerva's Den DLC did eventually keep that simplicity in mind and offered what I contend to be the best single piece of DLC in the history of gaming. And the third game is the third game. Look, it's the most ambitious game ever made, and while fun, stepped away from nearly everything that attracted me to the first game. With overhauled mechanics, a completely different setting, and no cohesive connection to what came before, look at the evolution of the enemy design. We went from this to... oh. Now you may remember that there were talks for a BioShock movie as early as 2009, helmed by Gore Verbinski, who made Rango, the first 3 Pirates films, The Ring, though his biggest accomplishment still is how he made us all accept his name as a disgusting verb. The movie fell through due to budget issues and the inability to find a studio interested in financing something expensive and violent. Because as we all know, nothing for mature audiences has ever made its money back. An R rating is a hangover above a project, keeping it from being successful. Anyone who doesn't know that is a joker, even if they have passion. Deadpool, Terminator, John Wick, The Matrix, Mad Max, and The Exorcist. Then after a decade of rumors in 2022, Netflix announced the film would finally be made, with director Francis Lawrence, who brought I Am Legend to life, asterisk citation needed, and penned by Michael Green, writer of Blade Runner 2049. You know, that movie everyone remembers for its riveting dialogue. Look, I'm half kidding with my criticism. This isn't nearly as bad as the earlier rumor Greg Russo, no, not that Russo, this Russo, was tied to the project, and it really is too early to tell if they're the right fit, even if they aren't David Fincher and Tony Gilroy. You know I'm right. And I've been careful about making pre-production judgment calls since what we'll call the Dark Knight incident. Did you see the leaked Heath Ledger pics? Oof, that is not the Joker. Now let's talk about what will really have lasting cultural significance. Heroes, Mondays at 8 on NBC. So here with cautious optimism and trepidation, would you kindly listen to the 5 things I hope they keep in mind for the BioShock movie? As we jump in, I always feel it necessary to state that this commentary here isn't just my fantasy booking. I am not interested in boring you just with what I want, because what I want isn't necessarily financially lucrative. This is a combination of what I think would be Bangarang, we're bringing that back, sure, but also what I think would be appealing to the most amount of people for this to be successful and ultimately mean more BioShock deliciousness in all of our lives. Cool? Cool. Number 1. It's gotta be rated R. It's really non-negotiable. If this project is in danger of falling through unless they rebrand it as a kid's show called Captain Wrenchy and his cavalcade of singing rust buckets, shut it down and we will wait another 10 years. I get it. Violence and horror are frequently thought of as tonal choices, not directly intertwined with the themes of the story. And it's true, pumped up gore is frequently a cheap cash grab or a distraction from inadequacies in storytelling, but BioShock is about hubris, vulnerability, and the call to social responsibility, all which played to the extreme become the most potent version of that concept. The shock is the point. It's literally in the name. And as I stated earlier, movies like Deadpool have recently proven that there is an audience for going uncompromisingly hard. Softening this would be as tonally inconsistent from the source material as, I don't know, turning Ghostbusters into a melodramatic story about family. Hundreds of books in Egon's house, someone did not remember the first movie.
I bet you like to read a lot, too.
Print is dead.
2. In the marketing, don't mention it's a video game. For a lot of people, video game adaptation still conjures Mila Jovovich cartwheeling with questionable wire work. It just immediately cheapens what people think its potential can be. Now, this story is so good, you don't need it. With so few original IPs out there, it's much more enticing to just show what you got and assume that existing fans are already on board. Sandman would have been a much harder sell if they were like, based on the really good but dense and not exactly accessible to new readers graphic novel. 3. Keep the isolation. For this first film, one lead and they are on their own. This is one person's story. This movie should be like a violent Castaway. No scrappy group of freedom-fighting survivors with unique personalities sitting around a well-lit table. I know you need to break things up, but that's what the audio diaries are for, which you should keep minimal and creepy. Also, keep the sets small and dark. These games lost their sense of atmosphere the more they added light to the rooms. Focus on a few moments of ornate grandeur, but for the rest of the adventure, it should all be about staring into a black abyss. Murky corridors with unclear boundaries, it's scarier, it's immersive, and it's cheaper. 4. Focus on this movie. Look, this does have potential for massive expansion. Prequels, sequels, TV, new games, animation. It's so incredibly interesting and rich. But nobody cares about your cinematic universe if you don't nail the first story that you want to tell. Insert completely unrelated image here. It's the biggest problem in entertainment right now, announcing pre-production for the continuation of projects that haven't finished post-production. And it's not to say go in with no plan. We all know how that turned out. Your parents are super important, except they are, even more so. This story from BioShock 1 is all you need to focus on. Tell that story so well that it makes us want to come ask you when you're going to make another one. What a concept. And finally, practical effects, I think I'm pronouncing that right. You want to know how you do a Big Daddy? Watch The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Seriously, hear me out. Not a good movie, but they created a huge lumbering Mr. Hyde by putting a real actor in real prosthetics, then making him bigger in post. For every movie that has good CG, there's 10 that flaunt how Hollywood is not where they think they are with the technology. The current state of the visual effects industry is grueling, inconsistent, and frequently used to completely circumvent the difficulty of live-action movie making. BioShock needs to be tactile. Even the logo, you can feel the texture and smell the mildew. The Big Daddies need real chains swinging from their movement. There should be the real ripple of water rolling down the walls. Splicers should be wearing real makeup to create their grotesque appearance. CG has a place, but think about how perfect it would be if it was used sparingly. The glow of a little sister's eyes, an inhumanly contorted limb or jaw, the flow of Adam through someone's veins. This movie needs CG, but it can't be the answer to every problem. And I'm only harping on this because this director is known for making some rough calls on what does and doesn't need to be practical. Above everything else, I just hope the filmmakers keep in mind that beyond just being a faithful adaptation for fans, this movie in the right hands is an opportunity for exceptional production design, sound, makeup, costumes, cinematography, score. Professionals in the industry would give anything for this kind of opportunity to showcase what they can do. So please, whatever you do, don't bebop it up.